She had everything: an unforgettable voice, fame that reached beyond borders, and a presence that lit up every stage she touched. Deborah Cox wasn't just another singer, she was a powerhouse. From the late 90s into the early 2000s, her songs ruled the charts, with Nobody's Supposed to Be Here becoming an anthem that still echoes today. Fans sang her songs, watched her videos, and followed her every move. She had the beauty, the talent, and the backing of some of the most powerful names in the music world. So the question that confused everyone for years was, what happened? Why did someone so gifted slowly disappear from the spotlight? You won't believe how the truth hid behind years of quiet. No scandals, no drama, no big headlines announcing a downfall, just silence. It didn't make sense. For someone who once stood at the center of the R&B universe, her sudden distance from the scene left a huge gap. Many believe she simply stepped away to raise her family, but let me tell you, the real story was far more heartbreaking than that. This is where it gets interesting because Deborah's silence wasn't just a personal choice, it was the result of a slow and painful breakdown caused by the very industry that once celebrated her. Her journey didn't start in a big city under flashing lights. She was born in Toronto, Canada, and had started singing in commercials when she was just 12. Her foundation was gospel music, pure, emotional, powerful. That gospel training shaped her voice into something that could easily stand beside legends like Whitney Houston. In fact, Whitney didn't just admire her, she became a mentor. That connection alone showed the level Deborah had reached. And when she signed with Arista Records under Clive Davis, it felt like everything was falling into place. Her debut album in 1995 was strong, but her second album, One Wish, in 1998 was the game changer. Nobody's Supposed to Be Here stayed at number one on the R&B charts for 14 straight weeks, a record at the time. She was unstoppable. Red carpets, music awards, nonstop radio play, Deborah had made it. But here's the shocking part. While it looked like she was on top of the world, the pressure behind the scenes was slowly eating away at her. After that major hit, the label expected her to deliver another big one, fast. But instead of allowing her to express herself through music that meant something, they pushed her toward a more commercial, trend-based sound. Deborah wanted to sing about real emotions, her journey, her truth, but the label cared more about beats that could play in clubs and catchy hooks that could go viral. And when she tried to resist, the label didn't fight with her. They simply started ignoring her. That's how this industry works. If you don't fit the mold, they move on without warning. Her third album, The Morning After, was full of quality songs and strong vocals. Critics loved it, but the label didn't give it proper promotion. It got lost. What makes this story different is how silent the rejection was. No public fights, no bad press, just a quiet push into the background. That was the beginning of her slow exit from mainstream music. And the craziest part, she never did anything wrong. She was simply too real for an industry that valued image over voice. As Deborah tried to hold on to her true self in an industry that kept shifting, the cracks beneath the surface grew deeper. She had come into the game with heart, soul, and a mission to stay authentic, but staying true to herself came with a heavy cost. After The Morning After was quietly pushed aside, it became clear that the label's interest in her had faded. They were now focusing on newer artists, flashier ones, with viral appeal and commercial packaging. The music business was changing fast. R&B was no longer about deep vocals and soul-stirring lyrics. It was turning into a game of image, branding, and trend chasing. And in that world, Deborah's kind of talent wasn't always seen as marketable. This is how the game worked. If you didn't fit the trending image or sound, you were slowly pushed out, no matter how much talent you had. Let me tell you, this is how the music industry quietly breaks artists. They don't always slam the door in your face. Sometimes they just stop answering your calls. While fans were waiting for another big single, waiting to hear that powerful voice again, behind the scenes, Deborah was dealing with silence. The same people who once called her the next big thing were now treating her like a risk, not an investment. But this is where it gets interesting because instead of chasing after them, Deborah started questioning everything. She had spent years in recording studios, tour buses, and red carpets. But in those quiet moments at home, away from the spotlight, she began feeling the emotional toll. She had always given her best, her voice, her time, her energy. But what was she getting back? Less support, more pressure, and constant comparisons to artists who didn't even have half her talent. And then came something even heavier. She was becoming a mother. She and her husband, Lascelles Stevens, who was also her longtime musical collaborator, were raising 3 children. And balancing motherhood with a collapsing career was no easy thing. There were nights when she was rehearsing with a baby in her arms, days when she had to choose between going to the studio or being there for her children. While the world saw a glamorous artist, she was behind closed doors, exhausted, questioning if it was even worth it. She started thinking, am I being the mother my children need, or am I chasing a dream that no longer values me? This wasn't just a career challenge anymore. It was an emotional war between her passion and her peace. The industry had a way of making her feel invisible, even after everything she had accomplished. Despite her chart-topping hits, awards, and standing ovations, she still felt she had to prove herself over and over. She wasn't just dealing with fading fame. She was facing colorism, unrealistic beauty standards, and an industry that seemed more interested in viral sensations than real voices. And the emotional weight of it all, being overlooked, undervalued, and unheard, started to crush her confidence. Destiny took an unexpected turn when she realized that continuing down the same path might not just hurt her career, it could break her spirit. That was when the shift started. Not overnight, not loudly, but slowly, quietly. Instead of fighting harder for a seat at a table that didn't appreciate her, Deborah began asking herself, what if I created my own space? What if I stopped chasing the charts and started chasing my peace? Deborah's decision to step back from the spotlight wasn't about giving up. It was about choosing herself. After years of trying to balance what the industry wanted with who she truly was, she made a bold choice. She began walking away from the noise. But here's the shocking part. While many assumed she had vanished, Deborah was quietly reinventing herself. She didn't leave music because she failed. She left because the industry was failing her. And instead of fading into the background, she found a new stage, one where her voice could finally shine without limits. That stage was musical theater. This is where it gets interesting, because not only did she return to her roots in performance, but she found a kind of freedom she hadn't felt in years. Theater wasn't about trends or record sales. It was about passion, storytelling, and truth. Her first major step into this new world came with her role in Aida, followed by a stunning lead performance in The Bodyguard, the musical. And just like that, people were reminded Deborah Cox hadn't lost her voice. She had simply found a new way to use it. In theater, she had control. No label executives were forcing her to change her sound. No one was telling her she wasn't marketable enough. She could sing her heart out, tell stories that mattered, and connect with audiences in a raw, honest way. Let me tell you, the craziest part is how powerful her comeback was, because it didn't look like a typical comeback. It was quiet, intentional, and deeply personal. She wasn't chasing charts, she was chasing peace. And in doing that, she ended up finding something even more powerful than fame: freedom. Her stage performances were so powerful that they caught the attention of fans and critics around the world. She wasn't just surviving, she was thriving. And then came a moment that changed everything. In 2022, Deborah Cox made history. She was inducted into the Canadian Music Hall of Fame, the first Black woman ever to receive that honor. For someone the industry had once sidelined, this was a full circle moment. She had walked away on her own terms, created her own path, and was now being celebrated for it. But what makes this story different? It's not just about music or awards, it's about a woman who refused to be broken. Behind the applause, Deborah had faced emotional breakdowns, moments of self doubt, and years of wondering if she still mattered. But instead of letting that pain silence her, she turned it into power. She started speaking openly about mental health, about the importance of setting boundaries, and about the pressure Black women face in the spotlight to always appear strong. She reminded her fans of something so important. Stepping away doesn't mean you're weak. Sometimes it means you're wise. And when she said in an interview, "I didn't leave music because I stopped loving it. I stepped back to love myself again," it hit everyone. Her words carried the pain of experience and the strength of survival. She wasn't just singing anymore, she was teaching, showing people that it's okay to walk away from toxic spaces, that choosing your peace doesn't mean losing your purpose. Deborah's journey didn't end with applause from the theater or her name etched into a hall of fame. The truth was, her greatest accomplishment wasn't an award or a record, it was healing. She had spent so many years being everything for everyone: the powerhouse vocalist, the loyal wife, the loving mother, the picture perfect public figure. But behind the perfect image, she had carried silent pain. The sleepless nights, the doubts, the moments where her voice wasn't just tired, it was unheard. And yet, through it all, she held on, quietly, firmly, and with a strength that couldn't be seen on stage. You won't believe how deep her emotional transformation went. She began turning her attention inward, focusing on mental health, on boundaries, and on rebuilding her confidence outside of the spotlight. She started mentoring, advocating, and speaking openly in interviews about the price of fame, especially for Black women in the entertainment world. The world often sees the glam, the lights, and the red carpets, but Deborah began pulling the curtain back. She shared how even when you're winning awards, you can still feel invisible. Even when millions know your name, you can still feel alone. But this is where destiny took its most unexpected turn, because in choosing herself, she began to inspire a whole new generation. Young artists started naming her as their influence, not just for her voice, but for her integrity. Her story became proof that success doesn't have to mean burning out, that peace is more powerful than popularity, and that sometimes the bravest thing an artist can do is say no. No to disrespect, no to pressure, no to losing yourself just to stay relevant. Deborah Cox redefined what it meant to make it in the music world. She didn't climb the same ladder everyone else was on. She built her own, and even though the industry once tried to box her in, she broke out with grace. That's the part most people never see. They think silence means failure. But in Deborah's case, silence was strength. While others were chasing viral moments, she was building a legacy that couldn't be undone by trends or time. She's still here, still powerful, still singing when she chooses to, on her own terms. And her story reminds us that sometimes the quietest exits leave the loudest echoes. Deborah Cox didn't disappear, she rose. And in rising, she proved that the greatest act of all is staying true to yourself.